In this lesson, you're going to learn how to use the slide method. To use the slide method, we can find several different things. One would be the GCF, our greatest common factor. We can also find the LCM, the least common multiple, and I can also simplify a fraction, and I call that SF for simplest form. So I'm going to start by looking at this fraction. I have 28 over 42. And to plug it into the slide method, the first thing I'm going to do is draw almost like a tic-tac-toe chart. In the top left-hand corner, I'm going to put a division sign. And the small number always comes first, or the numerator goes first and then the denominator. So in this case, 28 and then 42. So I'm going to start by asking myself, what is a number that can divide 28 that can also divide 42? And in some cases, you may want to go to the side and do some of your math facts to help you pick a number that will evenly divide both of them. But in this case, I know that both of these numbers are even, so I can use 2. So I'm going to start by putting 2 under the division sign. So 28 divided by 2 is 14. Now I'm going to do 42 divided by 2, and 42 divided by 2 is 21. So right now I'm looking at 14 and 21, and I'm going to see if I can keep dividing those numbers. So I know 14, I could do 1 times 14, I could do 2 times 7. For 21, I could do 1 times 21, or I could use 3 times 7. So right now, a number that I could divide both of them by is 7. So I'm going to go back under my division bar and put 7. 14 divided by 7 is 2. 21 divided by 7 is 3. So now I'm looking at the numbers 2 and 3. And the only number that I can think of that would divide 2 and 3 evenly is 1. And usually when I see a 1, that means I'm going to be done, because 2 divided by 1 is 2, and 3 divided by 1 is 3. So now let's see what I can find using my slide method. So I'm going to erase my scratch work over here. So one of the first things I can do is find the GCF, the greatest common factor. And that tells me the biggest number that fits into 28 that also fits evenly into 42. So to find the GCF, I'm going to circle everything under the division sign, and anything inside that I circled I'm going to multiply. 2 times 7 is 14, and 14 times 1 is 14. So the largest number that will fit evenly into 28 and 42 is 14. The next thing I can do is find the LCM, the least common multiple. So this will tell me the smallest number that 28 can make that 42 can also make. So I'm going to make an L by getting everything under the division bar. When I go down to the bottom row, that's where I'm going to extend my L. So here is my L. And just like I did before, I'm going to multiply anything that falls inside the L. So 2 times 7 was 14. 14 times 1 is 14. 14 times 2 is 28. And then 28 times 3, and go to the side and work out. 3 times 8 is 24. 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 plus 2 is 8. So the smallest number that 42 and 28 can both create is 84. The last thing that I can find, and what we will use most often, is the simplest form. So if I was given the fraction 28 over 42, there are several other fractions that are equivalent to that fraction. So when I put my slash here, this looks like 28 over 42. If I bring that slash down, an equivalent fraction would be 14 over 21. And if I bring my slash all the way down, my simplest form, the smallest form in that fraction, would be equal to 2/3. Our next example is 16/20. So I've given it to you as a fraction. However, I can also look at this as two separate numbers, 16 and 20. So I'm going to start by making my tic-tac-toe chart. And I put a division sign up in the corner. And the numerator goes first, so that's 16 and 20. And I know that I can find the greatest common factor, the least common multiple, and the simplest form. So I'm going to start by asking myself, what is a number that can divide 16 evenly that will also divide 20? And I know that both of these numbers are even numbers, so I can start by using 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 20 divided by 2 is 10. So now I'm looking at the two new numbers I've created, 8 and 10. And I'm going to ask myself the same question. Is there a number that I can divide both of them by evenly? And 8 and 10 are also even numbers, so I can use the number 2 again. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And now I'm going to look at the numbers 4 and 5. Now, since these numbers are back-to-back numbers, they're called consecutive numbers. And typically, if it's a consecutive number, they're back-to-back, they are only going to share one factor, which is 1. And if 1 is the only number you can use, then you're done. So 4 divided by 1 is 4. 5 divided by 1 is 5. Now I can go through and start by finding my GCF, so my greatest common factor. I'm going to circle everything under my division sign, and everything I circle I'm going to multiply. 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 1 is 4. So the GCF, the greatest common factor, is 4. 4 is the biggest number that will evenly go into 16 and 20. Next, I'm going to make my L to find the LCM. So the bottom row and everything under the division sign. And once again, I'm going to multiply everything inside of the L. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. And then I need to multiply 16 times 5. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 1 is 5. And 5 plus 3 is 8. So the smallest number that 16 and 20 can both create is 80. That is my least common multiple. And the last thing I can do is find the simplest form. So to simplify this fraction, if I had the fraction 16 over 20, I'm just going to bring that slash all the way down. And there are some equivalent fractions here, like 8/10. But my bottom fraction is the simplest form. So the smallest form that this fraction can be in is 4/5. Now let's try 12/24. So my numerator is 12 and my denominator is 24. And I'm going to show you this problem done in two different ways so that you can see the answer won't change. So when I first look at 12 and 24, right off the bat I know those are even numbers, so I can divide by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 24 divided by 2 is 12. So now I'm looking at 6 and 12. And once again, I'm going to think of a number that can evenly divide 6 that will also evenly divide 12. And because they are both even numbers again, I can use 2. I could have also used 3. Both ways would have worked. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So now I'm looking at 3 and 6. And the only numbers that I can think of that make 3 and 6 besides 1 would be 3. So I can use the number itself. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Now, because I see a 1 in my slide method, I know that I must be done. So I'm going to start by finding the GCF. So I'm going to circle everything under the division sign. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. So the biggest number that fits inside of 12 that also fits inside of 24 evenly is 12. The next thing I can find is the LCM, the smallest number that they can both create. So I'm going to make my L and multiply all of the numbers that fall inside of it. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 1 is 12. And 12 times 2 is 24. So the first number that 24 and 12 can both make is 24. And the last thing I can do is find the simplest form. So if I had 12 over 24, I can bring my slash all the way down. And I created several fractions here. 12 24ths, 6 12ths, 3 6ths, and 1/2. So the simplest form for 12 over 24 would be 1/2. Now, if I look at my other example, I'm going to show you that had I used different numbers, I would have still gotten the same GCF, LCM, and simplest form. So 12 and 24, I know, can also both be divided by the number 6. So on my other example, I'm going to use 6 under the division bar. 12 divided by 6 is 2. 24 divided by 6 is 4. Now I'm looking at the numbers 2 and 4. What is a number that will evenly divide 2 that will also evenly divide 4? Well, the only numbers that make 2 are 1 times 2. So I know that 2 could divide 2 and 4. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And I see a 1, which means I must be done. So once again, if I find the GCF, I'd circle everything under the division bar. 6 times 2 is 12. So once again, my GCF equals 12, like I got in the first problem. Now I can find my LCM by making my L. And because I used bigger numbers like 6 this time, my L is shorter because I divided by a larger number. So I'm still going to divide everything in the L. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 times 1 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. So my LCM is still 24. And the last thing is if I make my slashes, and I didn't find as many equivalent fractions this time, but I see that 12 over 24 could be written as 2 over 4, which is the same as having 1/2. So as long as you're using numbers that will evenly divide the numbers you're working with, it doesn't matter which numbers you use, you can still get the same answer. Try these 4 examples. Remember that when you are setting up your slide method, the numerator, or the smaller number of the two, always goes first. Write your math facts or factors to the side to help you figure out a number that will evenly divide both of the numbers.